So I am presenting on behalf of the Hemp Cooperative Ireland. So what we'd like to mention is that the Hemp Cooperative is all about cooperation and collaboration within a group of farmers. So we're, naturally part of the bioeconomy. So we say we're a mainstay of the bioeconomy because we work with farmers who are producing in various different areas. They might be tillage, dairy, beef, sheep, anything, and then they're coming into hemp as well. So they're interacting in a lot of ways there. So in order to give you a bit of history on the hemp cooperative, farmers first met in autumn 2016, and the co-op was registered then 2 years later. So it's a small community of growers using a historical crop, sort of revitalizing a crop that came from a long time ago. There was a lot of regulatory issues and interest was lost. So this crop is having a return to Ireland in a way. And so when the co-op was registered in 2018, that really allowed for people to come and learn more about what's been missing in Ireland now. So we're up to 150 active members, and there's a lot of interested parties around that. These members would be farmers, producers, processors, and any enthusiasts. Everybody's welcome. There's architects, people who work with the end products, but maybe aren't growing or active in the industry. And really the main reason the co-op was necessary is to address issues that a small farmer will face. There are huge obstacles in the hemp industry, and if you're on your own, it's too daunting to get involved in, really. So I can say from my own perspective, without the co-op, it would have been very, very difficult to start growing hemp in Ireland. So one of the main things the co-op is aiming to do is, on behalf of the members, make things easier, make the path to growing, to processing, to producing and selling in Ireland easier. Like you were saying before, like I love it, all of these things that Dara and James and Patrick are mentioning, focusing and gathering our energies together. It's really, really important. You can't do it on your own. So a little bit about me. I'm a new board member of the co-op. I'm the biodiversity officer at an estate in County Mayo. And in 2020, when lockdown was happening, I grew 2 acres of hemp here in Tormacady in land that was just absolutely shocking. And so it was a great experiment, and the village kind of got involved. So we had 2 acres of hemp in bog, basically. And then through the co-op, I learned a lot, and there was a lot of engagement and a lot of learning. And so I thought I'd love to give back and get involved there. So then I became a board member. So in terms of developing the co-op model, we're using a similar definition to what Dara shared there. You're member-owned, member-controlled. Every board member started out as a member, and we all have the same goal. We're constantly trying to reaffirm we have a vision, and we're aiming towards it, which is to assist the members in processing, in creating an industry, in holding together the hemp farmers, so that there's a real momentum going. And what we really like to is make sure that the members are benefited, that they're participating, and that loyalty. And it can sound quite intense, but loyalty in that you feel like you're part of something. You feel like you want to go out on behalf of the co-op. You feel like you're backed by them. So in one of the ways that we'd like to encourage that would be through an issue of a share offer, so that members could be engaged in purchasing shares of the cooperative, so that there is a pool of funds to purchase and to increase our processing facilities. So this would be sort of the idea that the cooperative would like to eventually have in terms of physical spaces. Right now we have county hubs and regional hubs for intangibles, we'll say, in terms of for learning, for meetups, farm walks. People are aware of who runs which hub. I'm sort of in charge of the Connacht hubs. People know they can come to me with an email or a phone call if they're in the area, and I'll know somebody nearby who they can talk to. So we have that for Munster, Ulster, Connacht, Leinster. And so that would be a regional hub, but we'd like to extend that to physical processing hubs. So then you'd have in Connacht, you could bring your shiv, your fibre, whatever part of the plant needs processing. And then, more locally to have it in your county. And then each regional hub is part of the hemp cooperative. So that doesn't necessarily need to be a physical central point, but that everybody is linked through the co-op. Regional hubs are all aiming the same thing, following the vision. So yeah, what would be happening in these hubs would be you'd have your shared agricultural equipment. You need certain specialized equipment for harvesting, sowing hemp. And individual farmers again can't afford to go investing in a whole new set of machinery. So having shared machinery and knowing what time of the year who will be using what, it'll all involve cooperation that way. Appropriate local knowledge. Ireland has thousands of microclimates, different varieties of hemp grow better in different areas. If you're growing in Dublin, you definitely have a lot more sunny days of the year than we do over here. So that's really important that you have access to people who've grown before. And then markets, there's different markets everywhere. We've noticed that there's a lot of growers in Connacht and down in Munster, and that there's, a hub kind of over in Wicklow direction as well. And so you need to cater to that. Where are the most amount of growers, where are the processing facilities that are maybe outside of the co-op, if you have private owned things. Micro-processing, pre-processing, that would all be part of that. So, you need to dry something on the farm before it comes to a facility if it can't be transported. Or, this sort of thing would all be catered for in the local hub before it goes somewhere regional. And one thing we'd really like to look into is the mobile biorefinery. So delighted to hear that mentioned as well. Turning a waste product from the hemp plant. There are a lot of waste product. There's dust and fines, but there's also the leaf and flower, which we're not allowed to use under current legislation. So these parts of the plant can be turned into a useful product through a biorefinery. They remove a lot of the legal obstacles that hemp farmers face at the moment. So the two things that we would really consider essential in each regional hub, potentially in a central hub, would be a decortication plant. What that means is that it would break the stalk of the plant into two parts, the fiber and the shiv. So each part they're kind of useless together, but they're very useful separate. So you need to separate them. And the other will be a mobile biorefinery. So, eventually it could be static if you had your hub, where you'd be able to use the leaf and flower, the part that comes off the plant, and that could be, turned into silage. You'd have your bioethanol, you'd have, like for pharmaceuticals, because cosmetic products, these things, those are all avenues we'd love to explore. So just for a little top of the excitement of hemp, why there's so much hype about it is because there are a million uses. They're online, they're saying 50,000 uses. Tends to get people very excited, but the amount of uses is great if there's nowhere to process the plant. So we have interested growers and we have interested buyers, and the public is like, why is everything made of hemp? But there's no processing facility in Ireland at the moment, not on a large scale. So for the fiber, for the shiv, you can make industrial products. You're making textiles from the fiber. You can make incredibly strong rope. From the shiv, you can make hempcrete. You can make a type of hemp wood, which could replace panel board, plyboard. And then obviously the seed, incredibly nutritious, contains all 9 essential amino acids, very high in omega-3 and omega-6, the correct ratio for correct brain function. And you can process it to just have the hemp heart, so you take away the outside skin of it. There's 100 things you can do with it. You can use the oil for cosmetics as well. And there's a seed cake for if you press an oil, you've got seed cake left over, which you can use for all sorts of things as well. You can feed your animals with it, use it as a protein powder. So really there are a lot of things to be done with it. There's also the exciting world of bioplastics, which is being explored in America a lot. There's hemp bioplastic companies springing up over there. So really major potential, and just processing and kind of cooperation among the interested parties is what's needed now. Yeah, so basically in terms of what we're looking at in legislation and funding, we have an issue in Ireland with policy that there is basically, hemp has been blanket banned from a lot of funding opportunities. So as you mentioned before there, Dara, that if you're a cooperative, it's easier to get funding. It's actually not the case in terms of hemp, because the word hemp is just blacklisted in a lot of companies. So say for example, Enterprise Ireland and things, the policy would just say, don't go near hemp, because of the implication of it being a cousin of cannabis. So we're doing major work there in speaking with the government and with the Department of Justice, making sure that hemp can be taken off that list because of the absence of THC and because of the way the products are used. So, if you're specifically using flower and concentrating the THC, we're not talking about that. We're talking about using fiber and herd. So that's a major thing, that the co-op can't get funding, can't begin any of these projects, even though we have a business plan. So that's one area we're really working in. So our vision for how can we get the co-op to work within Europe, within Ireland. So we would like a level playing field in Europe. So I know over in Germany and certain other countries, they're even considering legalizing marijuana. And so that would obviously have massive implications for their hemp industry, for the seed oils, for funding for companies which use leaf and flower. Geographical constraints is a major thing that we're considering. So if you're way out in Mayo or in Kerry, it's more difficult to grow firstly, and then to transport your material than if you're in Dublin or in Meath, over in better land, better location for accessing processing facilities. A major thing would be to remove industrial hemp from the Misuse of Drugs Act, which has a blanket ban on THC rather than a lower limit set. So, even if you have a trace amount of THC, technically the Misuse of Drugs Act is working against you, which there needs to be a lower limit set for THC. And we'd really like to accommodate small farms. We recognise that Ireland has thousands of small farmers, and we can't just be focusing on larger, flatter farms. We'd love hemp to be accessible to everybody, and to make sure that our hubs are training people. We have a really interesting case over in Connemara. There's a guy who I'm kind of helping out on his farm, and he has tiny micro harvesting equipment because the gates are all so small, you can't fit a combine in. So he's working with the reaper binder from, I don't know, God knows when, 12,000 BC. So very exciting with people kind of trying to innovate, to go back to certain things and to make things easier for themselves. And of course, another thing that we'd like to focus on is carbon credits. Hemp is an excellent crop for sequestering carbon. It's a very leaky crop, so it leaks a lot of carbon into the soil because it likes to interact with mycorrhizal fungi. So it stores carbon in the soil and in the hurd and the fiber. If you use those in building or in textiles, you lock them in. So as long as the house stands, the carbon is locked in. So that means you can increase carbon storage from a single year, the plant grows and rots, to hundreds of years. So that's very exciting. So that is my spiel on hemp and the hemp cooperative. So thank you so much for listening, and thanks for the opportunity again there, Tracy.